For many decades, America was seen as the teacher of the modern world. It built the internet, led in space exploration, shaped global finance, and positioned itself as the example others should follow. And indeed, many did. Countries modeled their economies, their universities, and their policies after the American system. The United States earned that respect through innovation, leadership, and influence. But time does not stand still. The world does not freeze in one era. What was once revolutionary can become rigid. What was once dominant can become outdated. And in that gap between past greatness and future relevance, new leaders emerge. India, once the student in the global classroom, is now writing its own syllabus. Not just for itself, but for others too. And that changes the relationship between teacher and student in a very fundamental way. The most important thing a teacher must understand is that the best students eventually surpass them. That's not failure. It's evolution. That's the whole point of learning to grow beyond where you started. But when the teacher refuses to see that, refuses to update their own knowledge, that's when a silent humiliation occurs. Not because the student was arrogant, but because the teacher was blind. America is still looking at India as a developing country when India is already developing the future. That mismatch of perception and reality is where the shock comes from. India didn't just catch up. It took a different route altogether. While America focused on maximizing wealth at the top, India focused on spreading access to the bottom. While the West built trillion-dollar platforms that served ads, India built digital rails that served people. While the U.S. debated over healthcare and infrastructure for decades, India quietly rolled out the world's largest biometric ID system and a digital payment network that works without internet in remote villages. These are not just achievements. There are signs of a mind that is thinking differently, not imitatively. There is a certain humility in learning, but there is also a kind of arrogance in assuming you have nothing left to learn. America is in danger of this second trap. It believes its systems, its values, its institutions are the ultimate version of human development. But India is proving that there are alternate models. Models where growth is inclusive, digital is public, innovation is local, and progress is not always packaged in Western aesthetics. That realization forces the world, especially America, to ask hard questions about its own approach. In a way, this is not about countries. It's about the rhythm of time. No teacher stays at the top forever. In any school, the student who listens carefully, who studies late, who learns quietly, often ends up surprising everyone in the final exam. That is what India is doing on the world stage. It listened, it learned. But now it is teaching through example, through innovation, and through resilience. Not with superiority, but with clarity. Not by dismissing others, but by showing what's possible. What makes this shift powerful is how natural it is. India didn't need to challenge America directly. It didn't need a confrontation. It just kept moving forward. And in that forward motion, it revealed that the teacher hadn't moved at all. That's the true humiliation. Not being beaten, but being left behind. Not being attacked, but being outgrown. It is a quiet defeat wrapped inside another nation's success. When students rise, the best teachers applaud. They are proud. They encourage. They share wisdom and adapt together. But if the teacher becomes insecure or threatened, they start to criticize. They lose their generosity. And worse, they stop learning themselves. America has a choice to make. It can either embrace India's rise as a sign of global maturity, or it can cling to an outdated role and try to suppress or dismiss it. But either way, the rise is real. The roles have changed. The classroom has shifted. This is not about comparing GDP numbers or military strength. It's about ideas. It's about relevance. It's about who is offering the world working solutions. In many parts of the world, when people now think of how to deliver vaccines digitally, or how to build inclusive finance, or how to empower micro-entrepreneurs, they don't look to Washington. They look to Delhi, not because India is perfect, it's not, but because it is trying, and its effort is visible, and its solutions are scalable. That is where credibility now comes from, so the world watches some with surprise, some with admiration, some with denial. But regardless of how the world reacts, The reality is unchanged. The student has moved ahead, and whether the teacher sees it as humiliation or inspiration depends entirely on how open they are to learning. Again, when we talk about power, most people still imagine tanks, treaties, or television headlines. But in the 21st century, that definition is already outdated. The real power now comes quietly. It doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't demand applause. It simply changes lives in silence through impact, not intimidation. That is exactly what India has done. No protests, no sanctions, no show of muscle, just work, consistent, intelligent, long-term work that nobody expected would shift the world's attention. But it has. The world used to watch Silicon Valley. Now it studies Bengaluru. The world used to wait for Washington's statements. Now it follows what Delhi is building. What does this tell us? That the nature of influence has changed. The world doesn't respond to those who shout the loudest. It follows those who build systems that work. America has long enjoyed the role of the loudest voice in the room. Its military strength, its media dominance, its political weight, all of these gave it a position of uncontested leadership. But leadership is no longer about the mic. It's about the message. And more importantly, it's about the method. India, without raising its voice, created something like UPI. A system so efficient, so scalable that even developed countries are now trying to replicate it. This is not about beating someone at their own game. This is about changing the game entirely. You see, the humiliation people talk about is not the traditional kind. It's not about embarrassment. It's about being outpaced. It's about watching a country once dismissed as slow or chaotic suddenly leap ahead in areas that actually matter in people's daily lives. What is more powerful? Owning 1,000 fighter jets or enabling 500 million people to pay digitally with zero fees, which has more real impact, which creates deeper trust and global attention. This is where India played its hand differently. While America focused on protecting its global dominance, India focused on solving domestic complexity. It looked inward, fixed problems, invested in digital infrastructure, and empowered its youth to think big. Not for the world, for their own people. Ironically, that's what made the world pay attention. The most dangerous thing a leader or a nation can do is to assume they are always leading. The moment you think you cannot be surpassed is the exact moment someone surpasses you. That's the quiet revenge of the underdog, and it is never loud. America didn't hear it coming because it was too busy listening to its own echo. India, on the other hand, listened to silence. The silence of its farmers needing support. The silence of students needing access to online learning. The silence of rural communities needing banking. It turned that silence into innovation, and that innovation into influence. Quiet transformation is powerful because it doesn't provoke fear. It provokes reflection. You don't realize you've been left behind until you look around and the game has changed. America still talks about tech giants and trillion-dollar valuations. India is talking about how to bring digital access to the next billion people. That is not only a bigger challenge, it is also a bigger purpose. And in today's world, purpose spreads faster than fear. The countries that will lead the next century are those that offer scalable hope, not scalable force. When you move quietly and solve big problems, people listen not because they are forced to, but because they are curious. They want to learn. And in that moment, influence has shifted. India did not demand respect. It earned it not in headlines, but in headlines that others now want to copy. That is the ultimate form of soft power. The kind you don't impose, the kind others invite. People often assume humiliation has to come from a deliberate act. But it doesn't. Sometimes you're humiliated simply because someone did better than you expected. Someone evolved while you stayed the same. Someone built something while you were defending what you already had. That's what India has done. Not just to America, but to the old idea of who gets to lead the world and why. Quiet transformation has no slogans, no armies, no propaganda. It only has results, and results don't lie. I want to talk to you not with pride, not with arrogance, but with clarity. India has just humiliated America on the world stage. But what does that truly mean? Is it a victory? Is it the moment of national pride? Or is it the mirror to the changing balance of global power? Let me be very honest. This is not a speech about ego. This is a wake-up call, a signal that the world is no longer shaped by just one power or one voice or one style of leadership. It stands not 1991 anymore. It stands 2025. Leadership used to be about dominance. It was about who had the largest army, the biggest economy, the strongest voice in international forums. It was about commanding attention and forcing alignment. But the world has changed. Leadership today isn't about making others follow you. It's about making others believe in something bigger than themselves. The idea that a country is strong because it can control others is outdated. Real strength now comes from how many you can uplift, how many you can inspire, how many you can partner with without needing to overpower them. That is what India is doing, and that is why the world is starting to view India not just as a rising economy, but as a redefinition of what leadership in the 21st century looks like. India did not humiliate America by being louder or more aggressive. It did not try to replace the old superpower using the same tools. It took a different path, one that focused not on military bases or political influence, but on trust, inclusion, and technology that creates access. While all powers hold tightly to systems of control, India is building systems of enablement. While others build borders, India is building bridges through digital public goods. Global self-partnerships and platforms open to all. That's a new kind of power. Not one that intimidates, but one that empowers. Not one that demands obedience, but one that earns admiration. In the past, leadership was hierarchical. The world had a few leaders and everyone else follow. But now, leadership is horizontal. Countries are connected not just by trade, but by values, solutions, and shared challenges. Climate change, public health, cybersecurity, economic equality, these are problems that do not respect borders. The countries that can lead in solving these problems are the ones the world now respects. India's success with its vaccination program, for example, showed that it could not only handle its own scale, but also support other nations. It wasn't just about serving its people. It was about becoming a model others could follow. This quiet, collaborative leadership creates a different kind of influence. It's not about headlines or diplomatic pressure. It's about being the first call when something important needs to be done. It's about being trusted in times of crisis. And India, with its calm, consistent, and constructive approach, is becoming that call for many nations. African nations are looking to India for digital infrastructure. South Asian neighbors are depending on Indian supply chains. Global institutions are listening more closely to Indian perspectives not because they are forced to, but because they see value in doing so. The traditional leadership model also often relied on showcasing perfection. Powerful nations tried to project that they had no flaws, that their systems were always right, that they knew best. But India, by being open about its challenges, poverty, diversity, infrastructure gaps, has shown something more powerful: resilience. It has shown that real leadership doesn't come from pretending to be perfect. It comes from improving every day, from listening, adjusting, and growing without losing sight of core values. This humility, this grounded mindset is winning global respect in a way pride never could. Even in diplomacy, India has adopted a new tone. It is firm, but not provocative. It is clear, but not confrontational. It has disagreed with global powers without disrespecting them. It has asserted its interests without isolating itself. This balanced diplomacy has helped India rise as a voice of reason in a polarized world. At a time when countries are divided between alliances, India is maintaining strategic autonomy while still being a friend to many. This kind of independent, value-driven leadership is rare, and it's making people rethink what leadership actually means. Technology, too, has become a platform for leadership, and not in the traditional sense of who builds the next iPhone or launches the next AI tool. India is leading in the creation of public digital infrastructure that is free, secure, and inclusive. Platforms like Aadhaar, UPI, and DigiLocker are not just technical solutions. They are leadership statements. They say, we believe in technology that includes, not excludes, that enables the poor, not just the rich, that works for governments, businesses, and citizens alike. This approach is drawing attention not just from developing countries, but also from global institutions that have long looked west for innovation. Now they are also looking east. The most profound aspect of India's leadership is that it does not come with a superiority complex. It is not interested in telling the world how to live. It is interested in showing the world what is possible. This shift from dominance to demonstration is subtle but deeply influential because people don't like being told what to do. They like being shown what can be done. And when a country like India, with all its diversity and complexity, shows that transformation is possible, it gives hope to billions of others facing similar struggles. This is why India's rise feels uncomfortable to some traditional powers. Not because it is threatening, but because it is redefining the scorecard. The old measures of leadership, military strength, media control, GDP rankings are being replaced by new ones. Number of people in power, scale of inclusive systems, trust built across borders. India is winning in those areas not by fighting but by serving, not by dominating but by delivering, not by demanding a seat at the table but by building a table where more people can sit. When we think of innovation, we often imagine billion-dollar labs, cutting-edge AI, or rockets launched into space. We picture tall glass buildings, elite engineers, and boardrooms filled with strategy meetings. But that kind of innovation, while glamorous, touches only a tiny portion of the population. True innovation is not what happens in the top 1%. True innovation is what reaches the bottom 99%. That's where real impact lies. That's where transformation becomes unstoppable. And that's exactly what India has done differently. It didn't chase prestige. It chased practicality. It didn't prioritize status. It prioritized scale. That's why India is being recognized now, not for copying the West innovation model, but for creating its own rooted in simplicity, inclusiveness, and reach. When America innovates, the world reads about it in headlines. When India innovates, the world experiences without realizing. That's the difference. Take the Unified Payments Interface, UPI. It's not just an app or a tech feature. It's a revolution. It turned every mobile phone into a bank. It gave millions of small shopkeepers the power to accept money digitally with a simple QR code. It gave people in rural areas the ability to transact without needing cash, credit history, or even strong internet. This is not just a financial solution. It's a new form of digital democracy. Meanwhile, in America, financial technology has remained largely profit-driven. Credit cards, processing fees, hidden charges, and banking systems still favor the already privileged. Innovation in the West has often meant more features for fewer people. In contrast, innovation in India has meant fewer obstacles for more people. That's a shift in philosophy. It's not about who can pay more. It's about who needs it most. And that approach is now inspiring other nations, not just developing ones, but developed ones too. What India has proven is that the biggest problems don't need the most expensive solutions. They need the smartest ones. A payment system that works with a feature phone is more revolutionary than a new crypto exchange that only works for investors. A digital ID that verifies a farmer's identity in seconds is more valuable than a luxury app that tracks calories. This mindset innovation for the many, not the few, is what has started to humiliate traditional models of progress. Not through aggression, not through superiority, but by offering something that simply works better for more people. Another example is India Stack, the set of APIs and digital infrastructure that allows citizens to seamlessly verify identity, sign documents, share health data, access subsidies, and receive benefits directly into their accounts. All of this is built not for prestige, but for practicality. No patents, no billion-dollar price tag, just open-source technology that any country can use. This is innovation as a public good, not as private property. That philosophy itself is revolutionary. Contrast this with America, where innovation is increasingly locked behind paywalls, subscriptions, and shareholder value. The culture of innovation has become commercialized. It creates breakthroughs, yes, but often without the urgency to solve human-scale problems. A person in America might have 5 different apps to manage money but still not be able to pay hospital bills. Meanwhile, a person in rural India can receive government aid, pay school fees, and verify employment all through a single device. That's not just convenience. That's dignity. India's strength lies in its ability to do more with less. To take the constraints of infrastructure, poverty, and population and turn them into a launchpad for scalable solutions. Every challenge became a reason to simplify. Every limitation forced creativity, and the result is a model of innovation that doesn't need translation. It fits into the real world, not just into keynote speeches or product launches. It's not wrapped in hype. It's grounded in me. People often measure innovation by patents, IPOs, or unicorn startups. But the true measure is lives changed. How many people now live easier, safer, freer because of a piece of technology? How many communities now feel included in a system that once ignored them? That is the metric that matters. And by that metric, India has started to surpass not just expectations but former leaders. Not because it's richer, not because it's more advanced, but because it understands that the future is not about making things more complex. It's about making things more accessible. There is a quiet power in solving small problems at massive scale. It doesn't look dramatic. It doesn't sound disruptive, but it changes everything because once people get a taste of dignity, they don't go back. Once they experience the speed, safety, and simplicity of real innovation, they expect it everywhere. That's what India has set in motion. A new standard, a new aspiration. And that shift is making traditional tech powers uncomfortable. Not because India is shouting, but because it is showing. Innovation at scale is not glamorous, but it is effective. It doesn't win awards, but it wins hearts. It doesn't dominate headlines, but it dominates reality. And in today's world, reality always wins.